This week, Parshat Vayeilech contains the end of Moshe's life, or the beginning of the very end. We're in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 14. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, God says to Moshe, Hein karvu yamecha lamut. The days of your life are drawing close to the end, towards your death, and God calls Moshe and Joshua to one last meeting in the tent of meeting, the Ohel Moed, in a big cloud. And what we're interested then in is in the next line. This is verse 16. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. God says to Moshe, Hincha shochev im avotecha. You are going to lie down with your ancestors, meaning you're going to die, be laid to rest. Vikam ha'am hazeh, and will rise up this nation. V'zana acharei Elohei nechar haaretz, and they will lust after foreign gods. Asher hu ba shama b'kirbo, which in the nation, the land where they will be, va'azavani, and they will leave me, God, meaning they'll stop following God. Hefer briti asher karati ito, and they will nullify the covenant which I made with them. What we're going to focus on here is one word in this verse, which is vikam, which I translated as they will rise up, the nation, the Am. But it could be read differently. It could go on the first part of the pasuk, namely what? About Moshe. Hincha shochev im avotecha, you are going to lie down with your ancestors, vikam, and then rise back up. Meaning that word vikam, to rise, can talk about Moshe rising up after he's dead, or it can talk about the Am, the nation, rising up to lust after foreign gods. So is it talking about the first part of the pasuk and about Moshe, or the second part of the pasuk and about the nation? Indeed, there's multiple Gemaras, multiple midrashim, which talk about which part of the verse the term vikam, shall rise, applies to. So one such midrash is found in the Gemara in Masechet Yoma, Nun Bet Amud Bet. It says, Isi ben Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Isi, the son of Yehuda, says, Ze echad min amikraot shebetorah she'en lahem hechra. This is one of the verses in the Torah that doesn't have a decisive way of how to translate it. It could either be about the first part or the second part. We don't know, which is very interesting in and of itself. And there's a list in the Gemara of 5 examples of words that we're not sure which way to translate them in the verse. Interesting in and of itself. But then there's another Gemara which says not that we don't know how to apply it, but rather that it should be applied in both directions. So let's now read that midrash. This is from Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadi Amud Bet. Sha'alu Romayim et Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya. The Romans asked Rabbi Joshua ben Chananya, Minayin shakadosh baruch hu mechai meitim v'yodea ma she'atid lios. Very interesting question. How do we know? What is the source text that we know 2 fundamental theological ideas in rabbinic thought? Number 1, that there will be what's called tchiyat hametim, that the dead will rise again, however you understand that. And number 2, that God knows what will happen in the future. Amar lahu, Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya responds, Tarvayhu mina mikrazeh. We learn both from this very verse in our Parsha, Parshat Vayeilech. Hincha shochev im avotecha v'kam ha'am hazeh v'zana, quotes our verse. Here you are lying down with your ancestors, and vikam, and will rise, the nation, this nation, and will lust after foreign gods. Amrleh. So how so? He's saying this word vikam should refer both to Moshe rising up and to the nation rising up in the future to serve foreign gods. The Romans respond, V'dilma vikam ha'am hazeh v'zana. So the Romans look at the verse and say, well, it seems more likely that the term vikam is only on the second part of the verse. It's only referring to the Israelites rising up to serve foreign gods and not looking at the first part of the verse about Moshe rising up. So maybe this is only about God knowing what will happen in the future and not about there being a notion of tchiyat hametim, of the restoration of the dead. says Rabbi Joshua ben Chananya, Nekutu miha polga biyadaichu. So, okay, you can take just half of it in your hands. Shiadea masha atid liot. Meaning, he says, at the very least, this is a proof text for you that God knows what will happen in the future. Meaning, even if you don't want to say you can read it in both directions, it's certainly a proof text that God knows what will happen. This is a fascinating Gemara. It's a fascinating idea. We know that in Tanakh, Torah Shebechtav, the written Torah itself, there's really nothing which makes explicit reference to the revival of the dead, Tchiyat HaMeitim. Maybe there's certain things that are seen as oblique references, like in the book of Daniel, and a couple of other places. So therefore the rabbis really find this central idea to their theology in midrashim, in expounding upon verses in the Torah, and this is a central one. The sugya, the discussion in Masechet Sanhedrin gives multiple examples in a row, talking about where we can learn Tchiyat HaMeitim, and this is a central verse. The Torah Temimah, Baruch HaLevi Epstein, he seems very convinced that this verse really can easily, that the term vikam can apply to both parts of the verse, and that linguistically that works very well. But he notes that some others don't feel the same way. For instance, Tosafot, in their commentary on Masechet Sanhedrin, they, as Torah Temimah notes, Ayin b'Tosfos kan shenira shelo kida'atenu da'atam. He says it's clear that they don't believe the same way that Torah Temimah holds. They think it's difficult to apply it to both sides. They don't make a final decision on which it would apply to. They just say it's hard to see grammatically how it could apply to both, and the Torah Temimah disagrees. He says it actually very well could apply to both. And then he also mentions the Ibn Ezra, the great medieval commentator. The Ibn Ezra does not think that the term vikam could apply to Moshe. He said, because the Ibn Ezra says, if that were true, then the rest of the sentence wouldn't make sense, because the term ha'am hazeh vizana acharei Elokei nechar haaretz doesn't make sense. And this nation, and they will lust after foreign gods. He says it must be that vikam applies to ha'am hazeh, and this nation will rise up, and they will go after foreign gods. He says if you take out vikam from there, then the second part doesn't make any sense. Look at what the Torah Temimah says. Torah Temimah says, Va'ayin Rabbi Avraham ben Ezra, the Ibn Ezra, ve'af shesatam devarav, that even though the Ibn Ezra he speaks very pithily there in his commentary, b'chol zot kashim hem ke'ashan le'enayim. His words, nevertheless, are as difficult as smoke in the eyes. Now, that was surprising to me, because at first glance, the Ibn Ezra is only making a grammatical point, that the term vikam seems to fit much better on the second part of the sentence and doesn't really work for the first part. According to the Torah Temimah, he says that idea is like getting smoke in the eyes. So what's so difficult for the Torah Temimah about this? I think it must be that if, according to the Ibn Ezra, if vikam really only works on the second part of the verse, then one of the central proof texts for the revival of the dead, of Tchiyat HaMeitim, according to Ibn Ezra, really isn't and can't be found in this verse, even though in the Talmud and rabbinic thought this is a central verse. So if you were to take this out, then we've lost a central claim for Tchiyat HaMeitim, for the revival of the dead. And according to the Torah Temimah, that is very problematic. So we can't understand why or how the Ibn Ezra would read it like that. Now, the Torah Temimah concludes with giving an explanation as to why, according to the rabbis and the sages, this verse would Why would there be a verse in the Torah that applies to both things, both the death of Moshe and coming back and the sinning of the Israelites in the future? And he gives a nice answer. We'll read that and then we'll conclude. Yesh lomar pashut daiku chazal di'im lo ramaz lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'kan tchiyat hametim. If the sages had not alluded in this verse to the revival of the dead, im kain la'ezu matara tachlis siper lo mashiyase amacharei moto. Then why would it be? Remember, this verse is taking place right after God said to Moshe, you're about to die. This is really the last communication we're going to have. And then he says, the people are going to sin after your death. So the Torah Temimah says, why would God say this to Moshe? Moshe's about to die. He can't do anything more about it. He's done everything he can already. So why is he saying, and by the way, despite all of your best efforts, the people are going to sin? Halo levad she'en biado liyoshia. Moshe can't do anything to help them. And it's also just going to bring him pain. He can't do anything about it to fix it. And therefore, that's why if God says, but don't worry, you will one day live again. So don't worry that they're going to sin, because Moshe, you too, just like you're going to live again, they're going to have the ability to live again as well. There will be a future, even though I'm telling you right before you die that you're going to die, you can't do anything to help them, and they're going to sin. Don't worry, there is a future after that. There is nevertheless hope. You will live again in some form or some way, tchiyat hametim, and so will they. They too will have another chance, as it were, in life. So this notion of tchiyat hametim is a very difficult one, certainly for me to understand what that means, what that's trying to teach us. But certainly the Torah Temimah believes fully in it and sees it here at the end of Moshe's life as a reason for hope, that even though he's about to die and he's being told that the Israelites are going to sin after his death, which would bring him pain, that there is still nevertheless an idea of hope for the future in the notion of tchiyat hametim, which, as we said, the sages see here in this verse, the proof for tchiyat hametim, revival of the dead, as well as the general notion that God knows what will be in the future. Fascinating Gemara, fascinating midrashic idea on this grammatical question of vikam, where it applies in the verse. Very interesting. I wish you a Gemar Chatima Tova, a Shana Tova. Everyone should have a good year for you, your families, and for all of us. More learning next week.